Joining me now from Capitol Hill is United States Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She has a long-time relationship with Cuba and has visited the island nation more than 20 times. Congresswoman, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now that the United States has removed Cuba from its list of terror nations, how long do you think it's going to be before we can see an exchange of ambassadors and full diplomatic relations being restored?
Thank you very much for that question. What's going on now is the administration is currently in negotiations with the Cuban government in an attempt to work out all of the details to open embassies both in Havana and in Washington, D.C. But I'm very pleased that finally Cuba was removed from this list of state sponsors of terrorism, because what that also means now is that we're one step closer to lifting the full embargo and allowing Americans their right to travel to Cuba unencumbered by all of the regulations. But we still have a long way to go, but that was a major first step.
Right. Insofar as the restoration of diplomatic relations is concerned, are we talking about a matter of weeks, or are we looking further down the line?
That's up to the administration and the Cuban government. We're not sure how they're progressing, how quickly they're progressing. Of course, we have issues that we're trying to address, so do the Cubans. And so it's my understanding that they're getting close, but haven't quite completed the negotiations yet. So I'm hoping that it will be sooner rather than later. We've waited 50 years, over 50 years, for a change in policy, and the policy has failed, so I hope this is expedited quickly.
You know, you have called for an improvement in the relationship with Cuba for a very long time. You've been visiting the island nation since the 70s. You've met Fidel Castro, you've met Raul Castro. Why did you feel so strongly that it was necessary to change the relationship?
It made no sense. Here you have an Afro-Hispanic country 90 miles off the coast of Florida, with people who really want to get to know Americans and Americans who want to get to know Cubans. Secondly, it's important for our economy. Lifting the embargo would allow for business and trade and create jobs in America. Thirdly, Americans deserve the right to travel wherever they want to travel. We can travel to Vietnam, we can travel to China. Why not to Cuba? And so since the 70s, you're right, I've been going to Cuba, I've been taking delegations, I've been doing everything within the jurisdiction and complying with all of the laws. And believe me, it's been very difficult, but it's about time we lift the embargo, because people need to be able to go to Cuba, make their own decisions about Cuban society, Cuban life, but also engage in humanitarian exchanges. There's so much we can learn from the Cuban people. There's so much the Cuban people can learn from Americans. I've seen many of their scientific and medical developments. We can certainly apply some of them here in America, and they certainly need medical equipment, medicines, and other types of supplies that we can provide for the Cuban people. So it's a humanitarian effort also that's very important that we need to recognize.
Right. Talking about those benefits, we see lots of potential here. Delegations are already visiting Cuba, especially in the agricultural sectors, even the telecommunications sector. What kind of concrete benefits do you see in the short term?
Well, in the short term, companies right now that are allowed to do business with Cuba, and have been actually for the last few years, it's been the state sponsor of terrorism, Cuba being on that list, that have been really hampering the financial transactions. But once companies can sell American products to Cuba, you know, you have economic growth in America, but you also have jobs that are created in America as a result of this trade. I know the ag industry in the Midwest and California, medical suppliers, the construction industry, there are other types of businesses in different sectors that are allowed minimal kinds of trade opportunities now, but this is only good for Americans in the sense that it creates jobs and economic opportunities, but it's also good for Cubans because they can buy American products at a much cheaper price than they can, say, from Russia or from Africa or from China.
Right, and as you've pointed out, Cuba has a thriving medical research sector. They've developed a lung cancer vaccine, for instance, which could be of great use in the United States. So, in a sense, when we look at this, do you see it as a win-win relationship?
It is a win-win relationship. Recently, I led a delegation of the member from the American Diabetic Association, a member from the African American Doctors Association, members of Congress, to look at their diabetes treatment. They have a treatment there that can prevent, in many, many cases, 70–80% of the cases, amputations as a result of diabetic ulcers. Well, we're trying to ask our government to allow clinical trials in America, because Americans can certainly benefit, especially in minority communities which have huge incidences of diabetes. So we can learn a lot from Cubans. I've seen the medical research, but also I know that Cubans can learn a lot and benefit from what we have to offer.
Right, the embargo is still in place. Is it not time for the U.S. to reconsider that, lift the embargo?
The embargo is still in place. The president has done everything he could do within his executive powers to move the process forward, but we in Congress have to lift the embargo. So I'm co-sponsoring legislation with Congressman Charlie Rangel and other members of Congress to fully lift the embargo. Also, I'm co-sponsoring legislation with Congressman Sanford out of South Carolina, because one of the issues now is Americans still can't travel freely to Cuba as tourists. So we want the Right to Travel Act to pass, so that once that is complete, the president signs that law, then people can travel to Cuba as they travel to any other country in the world.
So a lot of positive signs. We see things moving in the right direction, but yet in the United States there are many Republicans, some of them running for president, who are not happy with what is happening right now. I mean, are they just totally out of touch with what is going on in Cuba, with the evolving relationship, or are they just playing to one sector of the Cuban population here in the U.S.?
They're totally out of touch. This is a 50-plus year policy that's failed. And the Republicans, and there are very few of them really, but you know, they make a lot of noise. They have for many, many years, who want to stop progress. They want to stop Americans from having the right to travel. They want to stop our businesses from trading with Cuba. They just want to stop progress. And so we have to figure out how to work around them. Over 60–70% of the American public want normal relations with Cuba. Also, the Cubans want it. So there are always going to be those who want to live in the past, and there's some who want to live in the past, but I think the public is on our side and we're going to forge ahead.
You know, no doubt this President Obama, will be remembered for restoring the relationship with Cuba. But are you concerned that once he leaves office, if we have a Republican president who takes over in the White House, that a lot of the progress that's been made could be reversed?
No, the public is going to insist that these gains and this progress can't be reversed. I think we passed that point now. We're past the point of no return. People aren't going to say we have to go back to the late 50s, early 60s in terms of U.S. policy toward Cuba. It doesn't make any sense. And so I think we're on the right track. And hopefully we don't have a Republican president elected, and we have a Democratic president elected who gets it, who knows that America should be part of the Western Hemisphere and should really move forward in terms of our efforts to have normal relations with Cuba.
Right, and as we see these negotiations take place right now to restore diplomatic relations, to decide on who represents the United States in Cuba, who represents Cuba in the United States, are you seeing an energy, a greater will now on the part of the two sides to bring this, to normalize this?
Oh, yes. I know on our side we're engaged every day. Even members of Congress, we're engaged, and we have been for years now pushing the envelope on Cuba to get us to this point. But the administration is certainly actively engaged, and the Cubans are. And so I see, given my history, I've never seen the type of energy and engagement that we have now.
Your name still gets mentioned when there is talk of who is going to represent the United States in Cuba as the next ambassador. Anything you want to share with us?
Look, I am very happy representing the 13th Congressional District. I have a lot of work to do here in Congress, and I've got to continue to work to help lift this embargo in the United States House of Representatives.
Congresswoman Barbara Lee, thanks so much for joining us.